not tranquility in America till the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges.
The movement, the struggle, the fight, out of this darkness came light. For equality is our right, and for this his praises we sing, and this is why we celebrate Dr. King. For he once said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
When I first met him, there was something about his demeanor that just separated him from the average person. You sort of knew the way he walked, the way he talked, his basic mannerisms were the kinds of things that were really special. And little did I know at that time that he would go on to become the great person that he did.
Indeed, Dr. King was special, and Mr. Frantz Wilson, a longtime Rockville resident who lived in Montgomery, Alabama during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, will forever be touched by what he calls purely accidental, his incidental encounters with Dr. King.
Back in 1963, when we lived in Montgomery, the Montgomery Improvement Association, which Dr. King headed, their headquarters was in a small building not too far from the YMCA that I was in charge of. And when their board of directors met from time to time, sometimes they didn't have enough room in the small building. And so they met in the YMCA. And when they came to their meetings, he came with them. And as he would go down the corridor to their meetings, we nodded and say hello and that type of thing. Later on, we did get a chance to chat. And so that was really the beginning of what I say was accidental. The YMCA of Montgomery, Alabama had 9 branches, and each Y had a district that they served. Within the 9 branches, there was the Cleveland Avenue YMCA, in which I was the executive director. The Cleveland Avenue YMCA was to serve all the black people in Montgomery. Okay. And it wasn't integrated at all. It was the kind of thing that on a day-to-day basis, because of the other racial type of controversies going on, in order to conduct a program, was always had to be conducted within the framework of what the board of directors for the YMCA in Montgomery said the Cleveland Avenue YMCA could do and could not do. I was told one time that I was subject to lose my job had I continued to let the Montgomery Improvement Association meet in the YMCA building. When he would come to the YMCA with his board of directors, and he was on his way down to the meeting rooms, he used to look at me and laugh. He said, "You're mighty bold, aren't you afraid of your job?" Okay, and meaning that I was not following the directives from the board of directors of the YMCA of Montgomery. I did, purely by accident again, traveled from Montgomery to Atlanta by air, and accidentally sat across the aisle from him. And so the flying time from Montgomery to Atlanta is just 20 minutes. And so we chatted a little while, and he said, he looked at me, he said, "You still got your job?" And that was about the extent of our conversation during that 20-minute flight. So, but in those days, I mean, that was the run of the day. You did those things because you had to, you managed them, and you moved on with your life. A month or so after my family and I moved to Montgomery, Alabama, the 4 girls that were killed in the church over in Birmingham, that explosion and their death occurred about a month or so after we had moved there. And my wife was very, very unhappy about my insisting that we stay. You have to remember at that time in '63, all of the incidents that occurred as it related to race relations were sort of vicious.
Another horrific event that Mr. Wilson found himself in the midst of was Bloody Sunday, the march from Selma to Montgomery for voting rights, which turned out to be a political and emotional juggernaut in the civil rights movement. About 600 marchers headed out of Selma, but only made it as far as the Edmund Pettus Bridge, about 6 blocks, before they were attacked by state and local lawmen with billy clubs and tear gas.
The people in Selma, Alabama tried to march and were turned back by the state troopers and the police. And later on, when they finally did get a chance to march, I used a station wagon that I had just bought to carry people out, people who were coming in on planes and buses out to the marches, to join the march to come into Montgomery. There was a lady by the name of Viola Luizzo who was killed taking people from Montgomery back to Selma after the march was over. It just, again, by coincidence, Mrs. Luizzo actually stayed in the YMCA building the night before she was killed. And I did not know that until the FBI came the next day to get her bags and take them back to her family.
For her efforts and the efforts of Mr. Wilson and hundreds of others have not been in vain. The struggles of our people have been made known worldwide. On October 1964, Dr. King became the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize for leading a nonviolent resistance against racial prejudice in the United States.
You can accomplish what you want in life without having to fight each other to get it. That's the nonviolence approach. He studied and went to India and studied Gandhi and others, and he didn't think of that as overnight as a way to address it. He had done some theses on it when he was at Boston University, and so, you know, to have people marching down the street and policemen coming up and hitting people with billy clubs and attacking with dogs, and people don't fight back. Take me to jail. I'm getting my point over, but lock me up. I'll get out one day. But that's the thing. It still works. It still works until this day.
Although Dr. King preached and illustrated a nonviolent approach, he was shot and killed at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968.
When he was assassinated, and it was very, very hurtful in terms of how it occurred, when it occurred, and I was on my way home from my job for the day when it occurred, and I actually pulled over to the side of the road and I cried. I mean, it's just that it touched me that much because at that time I had seen him personally 2 or 3 times, and I'm sure that there were other people just like me who could not believe what they had heard. Another coincidence, I was in Atlanta doing some training, and that was the day that they had his funeral, and I happened to be on the sidewalk when the mule-drawn wagon carrying his hearse was going to his burial. And of course, the streets were lined on both sides, and I was just one of the many who just happened to be there at that time. But it's still something that I remember until this day.
Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech is recognized with Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and FDR's infamy speech as one of the finest speeches in American oratory.
We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
His dream, in part, is slowly coming true. It is a long way from reality. A very long way from reality. But he would be able to say what he dreamed of as far as race relations in this country, it's on its way to a better standard. But in no way has it reached the kind of thing that all of us know would be the truth.
Dr. King will be remembered as a world leader for the content of his character and not for the color of his skin. He is recognized with memorials in Hungary, South Africa, Israel, Ghana, and India. And on August 22nd, 2011, he finally got his memorial on home soil.
My wife and I have gone to the memorial, and we've found it to be quite a moving experience. There's some debate as to whether or not the facial features on the memorial itself resembles Dr. King, and my wife and I agree that it does, because we have seen him in person and able to relate to it from that standpoint.
Mr. Wilson shared his moving memorial experience with the attendees of the city's 40th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebration.
When I visited the King Memorial this summer, I had no idea that the man whom I so casually knew would be memorialized in the nation's capital on the same grounds with 4 of the America's presidents. My grandchildren always describe exciting things as being awesome, and I can only describe that visit of mine as beyond awesome.
The city of Rockville, the county seat of Montgomery County, Maryland, thought it was of great importance to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King. In January of 1971, the mayor and council passed a resolution commemorating the birth of Dr. King. It wasn't until 1983 that President Ronald Reagan signed a bill to honor Dr. King with a federal holiday. 3 years later, on January 20th, 1986, it was observed for the first time as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And on January 17th, 2000, it was officially observed in all 50 U.S. states. Mr. Wilson may feel that his encounters with Dr. King were purely accidental, but we know that Dr. King's journey was not by chance. His words were not random, his message not uncalculated, and his dream not unforeseen. For he had been to the mountaintop, and his eyes had seen the promised land and the glory of the coming of the Lord.